Welcome once again to Syntax Error, your pretentious philosophical pedantic podcast ostensibly about video gaming and related topics therein. Warning, this podcast contains mature language, content, and spoilers. You have been warned. Today we're going to be talking about The Order, 1886, and specifically the question I'm going to pose to my friends here, who are with me, Ian Manzer.
Howdy.
Christopher Morgan.
Hello.
And Stephen Amosi.
Hello.
So, here we go. Let me give you a quick rundown, actually. So, this game just came out last week, I believe, and it was kind of a hyped game. I have here, the facts are they announced it, or it was originally announced at E3 in 2013. It's been in development since 2010, so it's been taking them essentially 5 years to get it out. And the complaint that's being leveraged against it has a 6.8 Metacritic score, and mostly people's dislike of it comes from the fact that they feel it's not the running time, the playing time is not enough. It's about 6-7 hours. So, given all that, the question we're going to be talking about today is it fair, in fact, to judge a game or perhaps any piece of art? Should its length come into consideration when judging it, especially given that this was a $60 AAA full-price game? Sir?
Sure.
Ian?
This is Ian. I think absolutely. When you establish a price to your game, you establish a contract with the consumers. There is a unspoken rule that if a game is $60, there is a certain level of content that should be provided to the players. There are plenty of games out there that do have lower running time, but generally the cost reflects that. So that is my general thesis on the matter. And
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Chris.
This is Chris. I'm kind of on the fence. Well, no, I agree with Ian. If you have, and you said that yourself that The Order, there's a lot of cutscenes where you don't play. Like there's a whole chapter where you basically don't play.
I'll discuss that later. We'll get to that.
No, but I'm just going to use as an example that I think it should be. Well, I think it should be priced accordingly. Like definitely, maybe not $60, maybe bring it down to 40, even 50. But in terms of narrative, whether it's a book, whether it's a film, whether it's a video game, it should be as long as it needs to be. My Ubisoft, I love Ubisoft. The problem is they have way too many collectibles. You look at a game like, we were saying about Red Dead, or I can bring up some points later about Mass Effect, or back to Ubi, Black Flag had just the right amount of everything, and for the price you paid for it, you got a nice medium-sized game.
Sure.
All right. So this is Steve. I think that art and its value, what consumers are willing to pay for it, doesn't really have anything to do with its length. You look at any other media, and a 3-hour movie costs the same as a hour-and-a-half movie. A George R.R. Martin book that's a 1,200-page tome costs the same as a Neil Gaiman book that you're gonna find anywhere out there. They're both about $10-12 paperback. I don't know about the hardcover.
Well, maybe. Yeah, that's what it's saying. They might be similar in price, but go on. I see your point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that basically the consumer is gonna set the pricing on this. If they're willing to pay $60 for that game, then they're gonna buy it. If they don't buy it, it's not gonna sell. They're gonna have to rethink their price points on it. So, I mean, that's the basis of it. I mean, we'll get into a lot more of that later, I'm sure. But that's kind of my argument there.
Sure. All right. I think my answer is sort of a combination of all of yours. I think everyone has a valid viewpoint on this, and I think we all also agree that it's a little complicated because of the divide. I think this is another topic, like a subtopic I had in mind for this, that the divide between consumerism and art, like that clash, is very interesting, and there's no easy way to cut that up. But I think my answer is it's because of this medium, perhaps. Like maybe that, yes, as Ian said, a certain expectation is often applied, outright to a new release. Especially this is a big AAA release. It's been hyped up. It's supposed to be a couple other facts. It was supposed to be one of the PS4 launch titles and didn't end up being in the lineup. So it just got released now. So people, in theory, people who are excited about this game have been waiting for it for a long time. and they're the ones who probably bought it on day one. I bought it, I pre-ordered it, and paid full $60 in disclosure of my experience with it. But before I answer fully, let me read you guys some quotes that might color this from the developers. This director of the game, Dana Yan, said in an interview, quote, "It's not our fault the game fails to live up to the extravagant demands of our audience. I blame pornography for unrealistic expectations of game length. Nothing is ever as long as it seems, and they're making it seem bigger than it is with fancy camera angles and padding. My personal metric is 1 hour of gameplay equals 1 inch. You wouldn't want a guy with a 50-inch salami sandwich. It's impractical, as are 50-hour games. A nice 5 to 6 hour game at full price makes a perfect package for our team," end quote. Okay, so that's one, right? It's kind of bizarro, but I see his point. Like, I get it. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is appropriate to bring up now, but one of my favorite games recently has been Valiant Hearts. Okay, and that was a short.
I'll agree
game
with you.
With little replay value. There are collectibles in it, but I got most of those for the first time around, and it was priced accordingly to. So I felt that I got what
you paid for.
In fact, I would have given them more money from the experience I had, but again, it doesn't feel. Here, it feels like you're being conned. It's to go to Steve-O's point about books before. It's like buying a tomb, only to open up the first page, read the first 10 pages, and find out the entire thing was a short story, and the rest of it were blank pages. There's an expectation to what you're purchasing with paying $60 for something, and that'd be enough for now. But
I'll address that. It's interesting you say that because we were sort of pre-discussing this yesterday. It was never promised that this was going to be a huge RPG game. Nowhere ever in the marketing did they say, "Hey, we promise you at least X hours." Like, it was never mentioned at all. Like, the example I gave is, let's say Witcher 3 is coming out soon, right? Everyone expects that to be a huge, like, in-depth, like, maybe 100-hour game. And the developers themselves have outright promised that experience. For The Order, that was not the case. Nobody ever said, "Hey, you're definitely getting a 20-hour experience." Like, and yes, to your point earlier, there is like an average sort of, people expect maybe a 10-hour, 12-hour experience as an average.
I just thought of this. I remember Splinter Cell had a game that had a similar controversy a while back.
I don't quite remember that.
Did any of you remember that?
I didn't.
No,
I never played.
I was going to say the same thing happened though on what the hell was that in 2009?
I know Fable.
Oh crap! What are the
3.
Army games? The
Call of Duty?
Call of Duty. It was like Call of Duty 3 or something like that.
Whichever one it was.
Yeah, and
Sick of
and
Call of
that
Duty.
thing had like 15 hours of gameplay. I spent $60 for that, and Scott's like, "Well, oh yeah, people are buying it for the online game experience," and I'm like, "That's not why I bought a fucking game."
That's entirely different.
We can certainly, yeah,
conversation.
that's a huge different topic. In fact, we're going to have an episode about that later on. But I see what you mean, but that sort of like veers away from the issue at hand.
But this is my memory is totally working off memory, so I might get facts wrong here. But I remember there being a thing about the game, the Splinter Cell game being like 10 to 15 hours or so, or maybe it was 8 to 10, something around that ballpark,
Right.
and people being upset over there just being this short game. It was from all accounts, a well put together game with a length, and this is a similar thing, but less hours. So. Again, there seems to be this consumer, and this is not just an isolated incident, the point I'm trying to make, seems to be an idea in the consumer's mind over that game should be a certain length.
You're owed something.
To spend a certain...
Yeah, but that's a problem. You know, they're always gonna. People are always gonna find something to complain about. That's the first thing. Everybody knows that. But
We can agree humanity sucks ass in that
yeah,
sense, but
yeah,
yes.
but, you
So
know-
given that,
the fact that I think where this whole argument really stems from is possibly the model for pricing video games needs to change in and of itself. It's been since what, PlayStation 1? It's been $60
Or
a new
earlier,
game,
even.
basically.
SNES had $60 games.
Right.
I remember those being like $40, $45, but whatever. Yeah.
All right,
Go ahead, Chris.
all right. Has everybody here played the first Bioshock?
Yes.
Okay. How long of a game was that?
it's interesting. You want me to? I'll answer it because I think
Go
I'm the
ahead.
biggest Bioshock fan here. Obviously, I played it maybe 5 times now. Right now, if I wanted to play it, I could probably get through it in like 5 hours or maybe less. Because of course I know what I'm doing and I played it so many times. It's like reading a book again.
Right, but the
Somewhat.
first time you played it, how long did it take you?
probably 10 to 12. Like, again, in quotes, an average length for a game.
Right, 10 to 12, okay? And what now, if at the time when Bioshock was released, it was priced what most video games were. If today, given, updating it for graphics and something, just game time, just story, playability, if Bioshock was released today, and you bought it, and it gave you 12 hours of gameplay, would you be
Would I complain? No, probably not.
But that's my thing is, it's just like, if you're paying for quality, if it's something that's really interesting and engaging, and it's just like, shit, for $60, I had, like Ian was saying, I think that's well worth it.
I was just going to add really quickly, I watched Scott play for a little bit, and the game is freaking beautiful. It's a work of art in and of itself.
Aesthetically.
It's done by a small company that I've never heard of. They must have worked their asses off on this game.
5 years, apparently, or more.
Yeah, it's a great looking product. I didn't play any of it, but apparently the gameplay is really good too. The fact that it's 6 hours long was a labor of love for 5 years for these guys. They should be able to charge, whatever they want, really. But $60 is the standard price point.
They are able to charge whatever they want.
And people bought it. It's not like anybody didn't buy the thing. They probably hit great sales numbers.
True, fair enough. All right, so what I want to do, there's another quote I had. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ian has something to say.
Way to blame the victim.
Jesus.
Wait, who's the victim here? The consumer?
All right.
Consumers bear responsibility for knowing what products they're buying, but that doesn't also excuse people from selling shoddy products in order to make money off of them.
I'm not saying it's a shoddy product. I'm saying it's a very good product.
I'm saying that,
and it's worth the $60 price tag. Just for being a game that looks that beautiful. If you see a work of art on the wall that looks gorgeous, you're going to pay more for it, even if it's smaller than another one right next to it.
Subjectively, of course.
But a work of art is different than a medium.
A mass-produced medium, yes.
A product versus art, if you will. Yeah.
Would you buy a CD that had one song on it for full price?
No, but I bought CDs that had 9 songs on them from bands that I really liked for full price.
But then you're agreeing that there is a certain length that is okay for a producer to make, and a certain length there isn't.
If they want to charge full price for that CD, that's up to them. I wouldn't buy it.
And I'd also like to make the point that the video game business is less robust than any other.
That's not quite true. It's one of the biggest money-making businesses.
But not money, but I mean.
What do you mean?
The
structure.
Amount of product that comes out per month, especially at months like these.
All right.
Do you know how many games came out this month?
Not offhand. Like the thing is, like, when you ask me that question, I would have to ask you: are they gonna? Is it like this, like a AAA game, a AAA production?
AAA games specifically.
This month?
Yes.
Like a handful, probably like 4 or 5 at most. But we'll certainly get into that. But I want to read you a quote that's relevant to what you both just said that I wanted to read earlier, but it's okay. It's perfect. Fits now. This is from the founder of Ready at Dawn, which is the developers who developed. They actually made it. He says, quote, "I hope people who do like shorter games play them. But I also want to be in an industry where, as a gamer, I'm given the choice. I played 2-hour games that were better than 16-hour ones. That's the reality of it. Gameplay length for me is so relative to quality. It's like a movie. Just because it's 3 hours long doesn't necessarily make it better." And like that sort of broadly applies to what you guys were saying. So like I said, my answer to the original question is something like of a happy middle, if you will, between both of your arguments, both of your points.
But let's. I'm wondering. We're talking a lot about the consumer, and I'm like wondering, like, okay, we're all writers in this room. Narrative is extremely.
Full disclosure, sure.
Yeah, narrative is extremely important to all of us. And like we always say, like, a game should be as long as it should be. A movie, a book. There should be like excess padding. So for us, if we play like a 7-8 hour game, we pay $60 for it. The story's amazing, and and it's a nice jumping off point if they're going to make like the first part. If they have a planned trilogy,
if this becomes a franchise.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, for any of us, and I think this has come back to what everybody has agreed upon at one point or another, that what your initial experience is, what the narrative is, what the gameplay is originally, length of time doesn't matter to us. But if you're of the mindset where you just want to go in there and like play Pac-Man where you don't want many cutscenes. I have a friend who's like this. Doesn't really like cutscenes, doesn't like dialogue,
Sure.
just wants to play the action. This game will disappoint you. For us, it might not.
But I also want to go back to when I was younger, I would get maybe one game every now and then.
Same boat.
And I grew up on RPGs. Now, granted, not everyone has, but I'm used to games being longer and getting my money's worth out of games. And to the point that
Same here.
today,
Like you and I sort like we discussed this, our video game history. Like yes, that was sort of my experience as well.
But a lot of people can't afford to purchase $60 games many times a year, so they're looking to get the most they can out of their one purchase.
Okay, go on.
Agreed. But here's the thing, right? So, that colors your experiences, and again, they never said it was going to be a huge RPG game. They in fact said, let me give you all my impressions of it because it relates to this, because I'm the one who has played it. As research, if you will, for this discussion today, I tried to see if I could finish it today. I'm about exactly 5 hours in. I put 5 hours into it. I have not finished it. If I had to guess where I was plot-wise, it's about 65%. Like, I think we all can trust ourselves, or we're a good judge of like what the plot is going to be in a game, or like, where you are in the plot. About that, right? So that means I'll probably get another 3 hours of it. And like 8 hours is not like, that's sort of average-ish as well, right? But on top of all that, they outright said like they wanted this game to be a filmatic experience, not a cinematographic experience, right? They don't want it to be cinematic because that's too played out, apparently. But regardless, like that was their intent. And to Steve-O's point, I was saying earlier, yeah, it looks amazing. It's some of the best graphics I've ever seen. Clearly, that's where they put their budget. A lot of it, anyways. And I like the setting and the setup of the story and the world. The world building is quite good. So given all that, like, I'm having a good time with it. And I did pay full price with it. Of course, as we all said, it's all what you're willing to pay.
Right. I was going to say, this is going to give a new perspective of it. I was born in 1970, so like my first experience with at-home gaming was the Atari 2600, and better than that, my grandfather got the Sears version of the 2600. So, and the games at the time were like $20-$30, which translates to $40-$60 now.
Sure.
And those were like infinite, like there was no story to them at all. And the times they did try to enter great story, they weren't really great. And eventually, in the late 80s, you got the pop-up.
Was that E.T.?
Bubbles. Yeah, E.T. Yeah, exactly.
E.T. had a story, the story of being buried in a desert.
But, like, I never had a computer at home. Well, we did for a short time, but all my friends had these little computers, and they'd play the text-based games, and those were really fun. So for me, when I never had a gaming console, I barely had a freaking TV during my, 20s. So when I was house sitting for my friends and I got the PlayStation 1, I had the PlayStation 1.
Take it easy, Grandpa.
Yeah, exactly. And had Resident Evil. To me, it was like Resident Evil 2. It was amazing because you had a story, you had interactability. I mean, there was like a level of gameplay that I never grew up with. So, like,
that's fair.
I mean, I may sound like an old man when I say this.
No, that's completely fair. Again,
yeah.
as sorry, but of course, your experience colors your perspective and what you view of it. Like we were just saying. That's all. So that's all.
Yeah.
I just want to circle back really quickly to what Ian was saying before about, when you were a kid, you got games basically based on how long they were going to be and how much gameplay ability you would get out of them because you knew you wouldn't get another one soon.
Christmas and your birthday.
And that's fine. I think there's still plenty of games that give you a lot more. Like, look at Skyrim. Skyrim gives you like 200 hours.
I logged over 200 hours in Skyrim.
But you have to be an informed consumer when you go in to buy a game. I think,
or anything.
I think that I don't think that the length should affect the price tag. And give me one more second. But like, I don't think the length should affect the price tag. But if length is something that you're looking for, don't buy a short game.
I looked it up. It was Splinter Cell Conviction that got, and it was supposed to be around the same
I was
time,
never a big
actually,
Splinter
5
Cell
hours.
fan.
And Metal Gear Solid 4 also got criticized for being a very short game.
All the Metal Gear Solids were short games, except for maybe like
not all, but
3.
More than you think. Sure,
they were fairly short, but
But there seems to be a trend. Now, you're right. People will complain about everything. There seems to be a trend that these games that are shorter and I guess more story-driven and cinematic do have a backlash against them. And again, is that a justified backlash? You said that they never advertised that they were a big game.
It was
They
never
never
promised.
advertised that they were a short game either. Should they have advertised like this is a more of a niche driven game?
I mean, should they? So we can bring this up, right? Some games, not very often, and probably less and less, but you all have, I guarantee you have seen some point on the box like featuring X plus hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
Right. So they never did that either. It never says like again like. So I'll go back to this. I'll go back to Skyrim point, right? So this is actually. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase this. I heard this in another. Like I've kept up on this. I find this very interesting for us. That's why we've been doing this. But I followed it and I've seen a lot of discussions about it. One of the points I thought was one of the best, and I think Ian, you will like this. So if you feel that you've gotten ripped off because you paid $60 and your game is only like 6 hours long, that means you can't have it both ways. So. Oh, I bought Skyrim too, and I put 220 hours into it. That means I owe Bethesda money now. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you think you're getting gypped by giving them $60 for a 6 hour game, then you owe anything above whatever you have to put. Whatever arbitrary number is assigned to like the acceptable hours of gameplay. Anything above that, you then owe them money, or they should charge you more for the game.
Yes, but people are doing that with Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah, kind of. People? What do you mean people are? Bethesda is? No, it's
fans of the Elder Scrolls.
Oh, yes.
Are throwing money at Bethesda, and all of their DLCs are $25 a piece.
Exactly. Like,
so,
but because they know how to run the business for it.
But yeah, no. What we're going to talk about the shorter games is, and I think to this point is, it's like, okay, if there's a Fallout 4 that comes out next October or November, we all know that that's the next 3 months of our lives.
It's a lock, of course.
Right, because Bethesda games, there's so much story and sub-stories, and every time you go on a quest, all these, even the most minor characters, really well developed. Now, I'm on my fifth game this year. I played Alien Isolation, which was an awesome, extremely tense, tightly packaged. It was what, 20 or 30 hours worth of gameplay?
Less than that. It's an interesting.
But
let's discuss Alien quickly afterwards.
But then
Go on.
Next game I played was Evil Within. And I thought the padding on that was just fucking ridiculous. I mean, look, I'd rather have a shorter game that's got a tight story than, sit there and do some fucking pointless scene that's in a dream sequence. That's basically...
The entire game is a dream sequence, though.
Well, I mean... When you have a dream within a dream sequence,
you know what I mean?
That, the burning barn scene was fucking ridiculous. So then I got fed up with that, so I switched to Assassin's Creed. And besides it being glitchy, I mean, I realized for all three of these games, once you bought the season passes, you're spending about $80. Okay,
90. I would say 90.
Right,
it doesn't matter, but
between 80 and 90.
More than 60.
Yeah. All right, let's just say 90. Okay. So then I played Assassin's Creed. And aside from the buggy issues, there are so many collectibles, and some of the side stuff, like the investigations, were interesting. But other crap you had to do, like the Nostradamus things, they're interesting for the first 4. But now that you have 20 more to do, it's like...
It's busy work.
Yeah. And so then when we get to... we were just saying the other day, having a shorter game is all of a sudden a relief, because I didn't finish either Evil Within or Assassin's Creed.
Because of that?
I finished Alien and I finished Far Cry.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing recently the Telltale games for the Game of Thrones. And what do they range, an hour or two?
Maybe an hour and a half, maybe hour 20, let's say, generously.
So an hour and a half, let's say.
Sure.
$5 a pop.
Less of the season pass, technically.
Yeah, well, $5 off.
Go on, sure. But, on the surface. Mm-hmm.
But still, when combined fully, you're still paying that $25, $30 for 10 hours of gameplay or so. So, again, it's a shorter game, but you're still paying a more reasonable price for that.
Well, that's sort of what I said.
And there are plenty of great games out there that show that shorter games can be produced without the AAA prices.
The thing is, I played a couple of those the Telltale games, and they're fun, but the production value on them is really low. I mean, compared to a game like The Order, it probably cost, all 5 episodes of that probably cost a
fraction,
a very small fraction of not only the money but the time that it takes to produce a game like that. And I mean, yes, you are paying less for that, but the work that goes into those games is a lot less. They kind of churn them out.
I don't agree with that.
You don't think that they put a shitload more work into The Order than they did into Game of Thrones?
I think every
Telltale?
I think every person who works in a game who sincerely cares puts every effort they can possibly put into a game.
Absolutely. That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is that a
what it
lot
sounded
more
like you
work
said.
went into The Order.
He's talking about
More
than-
people worked on
Yeah,
it.
he's talking about the
More
the
people. It
mechanics
took
of
more people more time
Okay.
to make that game.
One of the reasons I keep providing other examples is because I haven't played The Order. I haven't seen it. In fact, I know little, so I'm not really qualified.
No, you're actually good because you have an outside. Your perspective is not colored by all this crap that's been laid upon it.
So I think Telltale has a great story, and story is something that's very, I guess, cheap in a sense that you can, if you have some good people who can write, you can create a good story even on low production. Graphics are a different thing. Is The Order great gameplay and graphics? Is it a great storyline? What is the appeal that is worth $60 or for that little amount of time?
And this we got to talk to Scott for because he's been playing.
I'll certainly address that. Thank you, my friend. Yes, I would tell you again. My broad impressions of it. I like it sort of goes back to what you were saying. Like a lot of the budget, obviously, like it's sort of unfair for you to compare this to Telltale games because Telltale this game had a huger budget, yes, and it just came out. Like Telltale games, like the first Walking Dead came out like 2 years ago or something like that, and like the production value was like always a little bit lower, yes, but given that / regardless of it, the fact that The Order itself is I don't know how should I say this, the story in both is fine. I like the story in The Order. Like, I'll just give you my impressions about The Order, and then I'll compare it to everything. I like it. The characters are well done. The voice acting is top notch. The script, while not amazing, neither is it cringeworthy either. I thought there were some good lines in it. I thought they played it very straight. If you don't mind, I'll give you guys. It'll be minor spoilers for listeners who may or may not exist. It's basically The Order is the Knights of the Round Table. Like, they found the Holy Grail. That's their backstory. Mm-hmm. They have something called Black Water, which is the water from the Grail. It doesn't make you immortal, but it will extend your life for centuries and centuries and heal wounds. That's like your healing mechanic in the game, right? And they're fighting, for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. Steve and I saw a little bit, and we discussed it. I appreciate the fact that somebody mentioned something like, oh, we have to go fight the Bedlamites or something. And, nobody said, the Bedlamites, and someone else didn't say, well, yeah, you know that they're like, okay, Bedlamites are fucking shit up. Let's do this. There was no exposition dumps about it. You're just, you dropped into this character's life and the setting that they built up, and it's a Victorian London, steampunkish sort of feel, which I really like. It looks great, and that Nikola Tesla is in it. It all kind of works together. Yeah, sure, he might be overused. Yeah, Ian's motioning making a face here. But regardless, if you're going to use that, it was used perfectly fine in the story. And, the production value and all of that is really high. And the gameplay is perfectly solid. It's a perfectly fine cover-based third-person shooter. What else do you want? You know what I mean? Okay, sure, maybe it's a little short. Again, as I said, personally, I've already put 5 hours into it. And I'm not done. I tried to burn through it, and I couldn't. Maybe I fucked up a couple of times, okay? So I suck at games, but I think I'm pretty good at games. But also, so I'll tell you guys this, though. This may be, you can address this. A lot of it, though, is cut. There are many cutscenes in it. There's one chapter where it's all cutscene. There's no gameplay at all. It's just dialogue. But I was I didn't mind it because the story, I was invested in the story.
When we got Dying Light, we thought, what, it was going to be a 35-hour game?
Maybe not even I wasn't sure.
We were thinking about. We're definitely not thinking more than 35
I wasn't sure to expect,
right.
But certainly not as many hours as we got out of it.
Right, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh, good." I'm looking forward to this, and all of a sudden, I'm like, "Dead Island had 3 cities." I'm like, "This is gonna have another fucking city." And Scott,
he was right.
Scott, the next day, Scott, dude, there's another fucking city, and it's just it was just all of a sudden, Scott and I were in this position where it's we were promised a shorter game. We spent $90 on it. So I mean, but the thing is, it was kind of The Order was coming out. Go on, Scott.
We weren't we weren't promised shit. They're here's our game, buy it or don't. It never said how many hours it is.
Yeah, but I thought you had read a review, or I had read a review where they basically said it's about a 25 to 35 hour game.
I don't remember seeing an hour attached to it. Maybe the reviewer I may have read said I got through it in X hours, but the developer, again, like themselves, nowhere was it.
I'm just saying with the reviews.
No marketing said you should expect X or less hours
but
or
I'm
more.
talking about our expectations based on a review.
Sure, you're right. Our personal expectations, that's correct.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I played Diablo 3 recently, and I'm actually...
Which I apologize for not joining you on.
It's an excellent example of padding. Because it's a relatively short game. You can invest a good number of hours into single-player campaign. But they do a lot of the bullshit things where Blizzard is notorious for having always get the next item. Same thing with Borderlands series.
Sure.
And then, like, they have all the achievements, not just the console achievements, but in-game achievements that mean even less than
even more meaningless.
But you know, if you're an attentive perfectionist like I am, then they do, and it's padding the game through trying to achieve all of these ridiculous goals.
It's exploiting your need to do that all that stuff. Sure.
It's for constant validation by a computer.
They're gamifying games now?
Yeah, it's meta as shit, man. Haven't you heard?
So you're absolutely right that, but there has to be a balance somewhere between a quality and a lengthy game that people don't feel that they spent too much money on without having all the padding. Now that's asking people to be honest and do hard work.
Which is never going to happen, of course, yeah.
Well, you can always just cheat.
I guess you could, but of course, like, that's the thing, like, as I bring it back to the point earlier, like, you cannot have it both ways. Like, if this is going to be your hobby, you should be informed, at least somewhat, about it, and, like, not expect...
That's never good.
Right, of course, you're right, but that's the problem with humanity, sure. But let's... Chris mentioned something earlier, and I think this is a good place to talk about it, right? Alien Isolation, right?
Yeah.
I heard complaints leveraged against it that it was too long of a game. Like, they should have cut out... Like, they felt it was padded. You and I, though, after we had played it, said it was the perfect length. It was cut up the way it needed to be cut up.
Yeah, because,
and I had no problem with how it was.
Yeah, it was a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but when you get to the, I won't go into spoilers, but when you get to the last third of the game,
whoever wants to play that game has certainly already played it by now.
All right, so I'm going to say spoilers. By the time you get to the third act, and there's multiple aliens after you, and the androids are after you, and you know, all of a sudden it's just like it's become from a game that was it's like the first quarter you can't freaking move without doing anything. And it's that once you get somewhere in the second...
You mean you can't move...
Can you explain that?
You have to move... He means you have to move very... If you don't know, if you haven't played Alien, you have to move very, very slowly and stealthily and carefully. Otherwise, you're fucking dead. Like, game over.
So for the first act and halfway through the second half of the game, you're like... I'm sorry, I kept saying quarters, but like there's 3 acts to a game. So like first act, you get some exposition. Then basically you're crawling on your hands and knees everywhere you go because you're afraid to make the slightest sound. And
it's a tense experience and well done.
And so when you finally get to the point that's you get rid of the first alien and you're able to walk around the station, you're like, awesome. It's like, I know there's going to be bad stuff coming, but I'm going to go around the station knowing that I can go around here. And then, but like, so definitely the first half of the game is much more cerebral than the second half. But by the time you get to the second half, you kind of welcome it because you were just on edge so much for the first half.
It's something of
viscera at that point.
I think you meant visceral, yeah.
It's
something.
No.
What?
All the viscera.
The viscera. Yes, of course, all the viscera splattered across the walls in the game. But it's something of a relief. Like I thought it was a good design decision.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, now you have like just a slight breather, but at least a breather at all.
Yeah, but when
in the plot and the how they parsed it out.
And when you get to when it starts turning to an action game, when you get to the second half...
It doesn't really turn into an action game, I don't think.
compared
But I
to
see
the
what you mean.
first half, yeah.
It's more action-y.
Yeah, but then
Sure.
you get to deal the action like in a regular action game. And then all of a sudden, in the second half of the third act, all this action stuff's going around, but because there's all these aliens around, you have to, everything's blowing up and all things are falling to shit and the androids are after you, you still have to crawl around and be sneaky. So all of a sudden, it's like it's combined. It was a very progressive game. It gave you one gaming experience, gave you another one, and then it combined it at the end. Yeah. Which by the time you got to the end, you were like, thank God.
It built up perfect well. Like the tension was built and like on a perfect ramp.
Pacing.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Ian.
But like narratively,
It was paced perfectly, as we agree. Valiant Hearts was.
But narratively wise, the story was solid. It never got so padded that you lost track of the story.
Sure.
All the collectibles were story related.
Agreed. We can talk about that too, but let's not. But yeah, of course.
So you'd say that game was worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yes, it's a good game. You should fucking play it.
What? How? So you did?
But
You
I'm
guys,
saying
did you
it-
guys buy any like DLCs for that game at all,
Yeah.
or was it just? So it was what you spent about.
Pass, so it was probably about $80-$90
Okay.
when all said and done.
What were the additional DLCs on that? If you don't mind me asking.
I will tell you. Let's both.
Is
address-
that an okay question?
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's
Basically,
okay.
there's 2 storyboards and the rest have been challenged.
2 story missions and like so they have a
So you're
challenge.
waiting on DLCs still at this point.
I think there's one more coming for it,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. It may not. It may be done, but here's what it was. Right. It was 2 story like little mini campaign missions, and then the other like there was 3, at least 2, I think 3 now, like challenge maps, like survival mode maps. So which isn't really story. Like it's more of a challenge, like the Batman challenge things,
Right. Yeah,
for
yeah.
Alien essentially.
We were talking about this the other
Yeah.
day.
So like which I didn't really care for because like again me like I'm not big into the challenge things anymore, but the story stuff was fine. The point of all this is it's like the reverse complaint that's being leveraged against the Order was leveraged against Alien.
Well, I actually want to describe a game that I feel is too long, but only from the fact that if you take the entire thing of like achievements being in a part of the gameplay, the original Dragon Age Origins had 4 different endings, and you needed to complete all of them. Now you could, I guess, save.
You save scum a bit, yeah, sure.
But where's the completion in that? So that's having to play this amazingly long game to begin with 4 times.
Yeah, well, that's because you're a madman, first of all.
But
Hardly anyone's going to do that, but I do see your point.
the Inquisition, but even on that though, it's adding elements to a game that to draw it out. That
Perhaps have replay value.
Yes. But did Inquisition have that kind of thing? Was Inquisition too long, or was Inquisition too?
I'll tell you about Inquisition, my friend. It was I vote like along with almost everyone else who knew anything about games or cares about games. It was Game of the Year last year. Like it came out a little at the end, but it was so complete. It was a perfect vision of epic fantasy. I think I ended up total hours was like 101 hours or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you.
It's something like that. And I did everything I could possibly do like in one playthrough. And I even went back, like there was an achievement. Speaking of that, it's perfect, right? Perfect that you bring that up. There was an achievement that you can only get by making one choice. But like it was near like the end game of the plot, like the final, like maybe like the last 80% through the game, you have to make a choice and you do one or the other, and you only get an achievement if you do one of them. And I was like, fuck, I wanted that achievement. So I luckily I found one save that I beat the game, and I looked them up like, why how come I don't have this achievement? Oh shit. So luckily I found one save file. So like technically I was done with the game. I didn't need to do this at all. But yes, because I'm somewhat OCD, not to your degree, Ian, my friend, but somewhat. Like I wanted to, because it was such a I had so much fun with that game. I thought it was so well done, so well written and acted, and it felt like a truly epic fantasy game that I haven't really seen in a while. So yeah, I reloaded, I replayed it just to do that. So yes, to answer your question, there are branching points. There's not 4 endings. There's basically one that you arrive at like a different way, maybe.
See, so I forget who made the point earlier about everything not needing to be an RPG or the Order not. The thing is, multiplayer fills that role. And I'm not a huge fan of multiplayer by any means.
I think we all agree here that we're not really big. We've stopped being multiplayer
Co-op,
fans.
yeah, but multiplayer, no.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't played a multiplayer game since probably Modern Warfare 2.
But that does,
or Halo 3, maybe.
but that does extend the life of a game.
Sure.
Even beyond what would characters would be a short. Like you mentioned earlier about Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Being short, single player, but yes.
Right, so here's what it is. Remember how I was saying earlier that some games you'll see featuring X hours. Like, let's say hypothetically, we discussed this. We were talking about this yesterday. Hypothetically, if the next COD game is strictly multiplayer, there's no campaign. In theory, they could say featuring infinite hours of gameplay. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
But that was kind of like the thing about Call of Duty was I was really surprised because like to what I had heard, it was never marketed as like tons of art. Like now when they have the game that's basically like, hey, tons of online play, they will say it in the commercial. This thing did not advertise it, so I was kind of pissed after I got only 15 hours a game.
Hold on,
Because the story was not that compelling. The character was kind of like the silent protagonist who was even like the third person of the third.
You mean in every COD game ever?
Yeah, it's just like I didn't really feel involved in the game.
He probably wasn't silent, but he might as well have been.
Are we talking about Call of Duty, one of the Modern Warfare 3?
It was one that came out in
Or
2009.
I mean, it wasn't even.
You
called
don't know
Modern
which one
Warfare
you
at
mean,
that point.
like-
It was the one that was from 2009. I can't remember. There's been like,
It's either the first Modern War or the second Modern War.
The original Modern Warfare. It must have been the original Modern Warfare because as soon as that
no,
came
it was
out,
like the third. It was like I think it was 3.
It can't have been. I don't
Or
think.
no,
it
no,
was
no, the first Modern Warfare. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because as soon as that came out, that
Jeez,
was
like Tom
and
Clancy
also,
was.
by the way, I love the single player campaign on that game, but that's a whole other story. Anything after that, like that's why I asked you which one it was, because anything after that, it was like Call of Duty is an online game. Like that's what it is. You know, like that's where that started. Like Halo was the first one to do that, and Call of Duty was a spiritual successor. There are a lot of other games that are like big multiplayer games, but those two are the only two that I can really think of that owned the marketplace on that.
Go to commercial.
Yeah, sure. Like, all right, we also discussed a little bit about like the campaign of that. It was memorable, but like again, like it's all to me. It's a huge like it's the Branson pickle of gray areas. Like, there's so many things that like aspects you have to consider about like at least a case like this, right? Like, and because people are people, as we said multiple times, like. Are you owed something? Maybe, but not quite what you think you're owed, I think. So on that note, you guys want to take a break real quick?
Sure.
Let's start with the sponsors.
Okay, time for a commercial break. This has been Syntax Error. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time. Music by Stephen Hermosi. Editing and engineering by Chris Morgan. Syntax Error is part of a Lost Signals Productions. All rights reserved.